The following segment is general in nature and shouldn't be taken as personal professional advice. Listeners should seek their own independent assessment from a qualified advisor and not rely solely on the general nature of information in this program.
Finance expert Sharon Jones is here now to help you with some simple, practical tips on managing your budget now that we've heard how the federal budget is going to affect us. Or, well, we've got a bit of an idea anyway. If it all comes off, that'll be another thing. If you're in a family earning less than $90,000 a year, they say, or they estimate you'll have about $2,000 extra in the budget. So how do you put it to best use, Sharon?
Rachel, I'm very pleased to join you today. Well, the best use of your money depends on how you're designing your future. And that's what a budget is all about. It's about telling the story of your life. So sometimes people get too caught up with the figures first of all. They should take a step back and think about designing their future first. And then they'll know
I could get very caught up in that though.
Yeah. But it's good to do because it's better than if you start with just looking at the electricity bills and all the bills that are going to go under the carbon tax and thinking about them, you kind of forget to design your life. So it's best to start off with designing your life first. So it's going to be different for everyone.
All right, 1300 222 720 if you've got questions for Sharon, and they can be any kind of personal budget question, 1300 222 720 to call in, or if you're moving pretty quickly today and you haven't got the time, 0437 922 720. I guess one thing that most people will be talking about is $820 if you are a family with a teenage child, I believe, or a sort of a high school age child. How do you put that to best use?
Well, again, it depends on what sort of future you're designing for that child. So for most people, it will be about their education because that's the stage of life that they're at. And so putting it into things that are going to go towards their education is the best use of it. Now, of course, if you ask the child themselves, they'd probably say that they wanted a PlayStation or a television, or they'd have all kinds of other ideas. And parents might think, Bali. We need a holiday. Yeah. If you've got teenage kids, they're going to be very in touch with that emotion. But the best thing to do really is to invest into their future, and so put it towards their education, particularly if they're thinking about going on to university. It's going to get quite expensive, so make sure that you're investing into that education with that money. It's a bonus. It's found money. It's money you didn't have until last night. So make sure you don't spend it on other things.
What's the idea behind, a government giving families, say, $800 for that? Is it the idea of it to put it back into the economy? They want you to spend on books and on school uniforms and all the rest of it? Or, does that work for families, do you think?
Well, it depends on your view of the government, I suppose. Are they trying to buy votes with that because they have unhitched it from being a purely educational rebate? So whether they're trying to buy votes or not, like everyone, they're designing their own future, and for their future, I guess they want to keep their jobs and get re-elected. So I think it's probably more about that, really.
Now, the carbon tax is something, Sharon, that I think a lot of people are going to be really interested in.
Yes.
And, a lot of backwards and forwards. We've heard recently that it's going ahead. In the budget, what we've seen is a compensation of about $70 per family, I think, is the number that I've seen bandied about. So how do you work that into your budget? Do you think, all right, well, I know my bills are going to be a bit more expensive. I'll put a bit more aside. It just feels like there's a lot of unknown quantities there.
There is. It's very unknown for everyone, but you're right. The best thing to do is start now by upping your budgets, particularly for your energy costs, electricity in particular, and putting more aside to pay that bill. Yeah.
Okay. And bills in general, I know that you've got a bit of a philosophy on how to deal with those. When it comes to this time of year, you start thinking about, okay, taxes, tax time, budgets on everybody's minds. Is there a way that you can, I know you say step back, and then when you've stepped back and worked out the kind of life that you want, where do you go from there?
Well, what I like to do is I call it my never pay bills system, and that's to actually match your bills to your revenue. So if you're getting paid fortnightly, start paying your bills fortnightly. Don't wait until the biller sends you a bill and after 2 months and says, this is when I demand you pay me this much. Instead of doing that, start paying fortnightly so that all of your creditors are always getting money from you. That's a good place to start. What that does is stabilise your budget. So I worked a lot of times with hospitals, and I was really horrified when I started talking to the emergency emergency doctors, because when they bring you into accident and emergency, you would think that they're trying to fix your problem, but they're not. They're actually just trying to stabilise you. And so that's why the news media always reports someone is serious but stable, or, improving but stable. Stability is the critical factor for your staying alive. And it's the same with your finances. Getting things stable is the first thing that you should try and do, and paying things fortnightly helps you to do that. So you don't have the big roller coaster of we've got loads of income one minute and then we're broke the next.
Yeah, I know that very well. I'm
Every
pretty
payday.
bad. Yeah. I think my partner's much better with money than I am and budgeting, but it just seems like it's a hard thing to do to stick to it.
Well, I think if you automate things, then that really helps. So get yourself removed from the process. If you're not a sort of person that likes to be hands-on managing it and finds consistency hard, then make sure it's automated. So set up those payments from your bank account that go out on the day you get paid, so you don't have time to spend it, and get it automated. That really, really helps.
Fair enough. Sharon Jones is with me on Afternoons today, right around WA. It's Rachael Fountain with you. If you've got questions about your personal budget, then give us a buzz or send us a text, 0437 922 720. I feel like at this point of the day after budget night, it's a bit like, I feel like I'm tired of talking about money almost. Now, one question that we have had come through is pensioners. So a pensioner has worked out they'll be $308, I think is the figure, better off a year. How do you forward plan to make the most of something like that?
Okay, now with pensioners, it's really important that they do forward plan. You've hit the nail on the head, because they are on limited budgets normally, and they are going to feel some impact from this carbon tax. So they need to start paying their electricity bills and things like that are going to go up with that money. They can't think, I'm getting a $300 bonus and just go out and spend it. They have to make sure that they're forward planning about the increased expenses, because this year is going to be more expensive for most of us than last year was.
We've just had a text from Phil. Phil says, somewhat sceptically, 70% of people who get the cash, and I think he's talking about the $800 payment, will be off like a bride's nightie, Phil says, to a computer giants or an electronics store. Then they'll complain they can't afford to educate their kids. Remember the GFC payment. That's interesting, because I wonder now, a few years down the track, you remember getting that surplus payment, or that the stimulus payment, that it was. How did you spend yours? And looking back, did it change your life much now that we're, I think, three or 4 years on from that, are we? 0437 922 720. Phil, how did you spend yours? Can you remember that, Sharon?
I can, but unfortunately I didn't get it, so I wasn't eligible. But I know that a lot of people did, and there are a lot of Australian businesses really crying foul too, because a lot of the money just went straight offshore with buying Chinese televisions or whatever. And so it didn't really invest back into our economy and become a multiplier effect. And I think a lot of the commentary around the time too was that it was given to people that are on benefits from Centrelink. So they're people that by definition aren't producing more than they're actually needing to live. So it didn't have any multiplier effect or the stimulus that they claimed it was going to have. So it was a bit of a flop as far as economic policy went at the time. So let's hope that this one is actually spent on schools in Australia.
There's so many variables, aren't there? And
yeah.
people, we have freedom of choice. It's the country we live in. So, when you put money in people's pockets, it goes where they want it to go.
That's right.
Or where they choose it to go, I guess. An interesting text here from Troy, and I'll have to paraphrase a couple of the things you said, Troy, but he says, I work as a WA miner in the Pilbara, and he feels really badly treated by this budget. I mean, if you're somebody who does work, say, in the Pilbara where cost of living is very high, we didn't see a lot of return for those kind of places in this budget.
No, and it's interesting that I don't know if you've heard the Premier's comments this morning, and the words that he used was that the budget was designed for the eastern states. And so the government has designed a future that they have in mind. And if you agree with the Premier, which I think a lot of Western Australians do today, they've designed it for the eastern states and they've sent the bill to us. So basically they're taking a lot of the money from WA and sending it over east. And I think a lot of Western Australians are justifiably aggrieved with that policy decision.
A couple more questions here, Sharon. One from a listener. I'm a student. It's looking like an extra $200 a year here for me. So how do I make the most of that? And I'm just thinking, if I was in that place when I was at uni, that's a textbook and a half. That some of those textbooks are $150.
Yeah. And there are ways to save on textbooks, and for all of us, we should be shopping around, finding alternatives on eBay or Gumtree, getting second-hand rather than brand new. And with that 200, don't do anything with the whole 200. Make sure that you spend some. Make sure that you invest some. So start the miracle of investing. Start getting some income back on some of your money. Even though it's going to be small, start doing that. Even if you can just put some in a bank account and get some interest on it, that's sort of the least you can do as far as investing. But don't spend it all. Start doing something that you can.
And does that go, is it the same advice? Because I think it's a similar amount of money that you will be getting extra in the pocket, about $200 if you're on the dole, for use of a better word, for on any kind of benefit. So is it a similar advice there?
Yeah, and it's really hard. I don't know if you've ever tried to live on Centrelink benefit, but it's really, really hard to do. But you have to be disciplined and invest in your own future and say, I am going to save something. Maybe it's only 2% of what you get or 5%. It might be a very small portion to start with, but at least do something to start that and break you out of the cycle of having to depend on your benefit.
Sharon Jones, thank you so much for your time today. Any parting words of wisdom for us on the day after budget hangover day?
Yeah, don't let the politicians design your life for you. Design your own life, tell your own financial story, and you'll be better off.
Thanks very much, Sharon.
Thank you, Rachel.
See you soon. Sharon Jones, the financial expert here on 7:20 Afternoons, 2.
You're part of Afternoons with Rachael Fountain. Stay